So TNA Lockdown 2014 took place in Miami, Florida. The show starts with a six-man tag team match. The Great Muta, Sanada, and Yasu versus Bad Influence and Chris Sabin. Decent match. The match ends with Daniels and Sabin whipping Sanada off the ropes. Sanada comes off the ropes, ducks a double blow by Daniels and Sabin, and comes off the opposite ropes, hitting both of them with a dual drop kick. Then Sanada delivers a standard drop kick to Kazarian. He follows that by picking up Daniels and executing a fireman's carry cutter. Sanada goes for the pin, but Daniels kicks out. He hooks Daniels' arms from behind, but Kazarian kicks him from behind. Kazarian grabs Sanada around the waist from behind, and Sabin gives him an enziguri. Sanada stays on his feet, but Daniels and Kazarian deliver a high and low. Daniels goes for the pin, but Sanada kicks out. Daniels and Kazarian whip Sanada off the ropes, but he reverses the whip on Daniels. Daniels comes off the ropes, but Sanada somersaults, causing Daniels to clothesline Kazarian. Sanada makes the tag to Muta, who comes in the ring and hits Daniels with two drop kicks to the knee. Then Muta executes 3 consecutive dragon screw leg whips on Daniels, Sabin, and Kazarian. He applies a leg bar submission on Daniels as Sanada and Yasu prevent Kazarian and Sabin from interfering. However, Sabin gets away and breaks it up. He picks up Muta and holds him up around the waist from behind. Kazarian comes off the ropes, but Muta gets away by elbowing Sabin in the head and then hits Kazarian in the face with the green mist. Sanada executes a stunner on Kazarian and Yasu nails Sabin with a blow. Muta tags Sanada in and Muta then hits Daniels with a shining wizard. Then Sanada comes off the top rope with a moonsault to pin Daniels for the 3. The winners of the match, the Great Muta, Sanada, and Yasu. This match signified the beginning of the push of Wrestle 1 talent in TNA, and the showcase belonged to Sanada. TNA is very high on Sanada since they put the X Division belt on him, and he was impressive. For nostalgic reasons, seeing Muta compete again in the United States was incredible. He looked solid. It does bring attention to the fact as to why the promotion for this match wasn't better, particularly in reference to Sanada and Muta. As far as Sanada goes, he won the X Division title from Austin Aries at the One Night Only pay-per-view in Tokyo that was taped a week before Lockdown. But they couldn't acknowledge that title change because the March 6th Impact that was taped back in January showed Aries with the belt in the opening segment. TNA couldn't do anything about that, but since they knew Sanada was the new champion, they could have shown some ring footage on him and informed fans that they would see him at Lockdown. The more serious issue is TNA's failure to market the appearance of Muta at Lockdown. Many older fans have given up on wrestling because of the product that exists today. However, these same fans remember watching Muta back in the NWA and later WCW. TNA should have reached out to various wrestling sources that could reach those older fans who would have tuned in to Lockdown to see Muta. They likely wouldn't have bought the pay-per-view, but they could watch clips online for free, and when they see Muta, they would also see what TNA is about. That's one way of how you attract new fans, but because they don't fit the demographic of what TNA's advertisers want, they don't care about them. That shouldn't have mattered because it's about gaining more fans. This was a blown opportunity which they should have used to their advantage. So then we see Rockstar Doug come to the ring. He introduces Dixie Carter and she comes out. And she tries to bury the king and tries to put down the Miami crowd. Dixie says that she has an insurance policy for the Lethal Lockdown match that will prevent Montel Porter from taking over the company. She also says that her goon squad will keep Jeff Hardy from getting into the arena. This is not Impact. There shouldn't be one person that can justify what the point of this was. other than the Dixie heel supporters that will actually tell you that she was getting good heat from this when she wasn't. So then we see Jeremy Borash backstage talking with Velvet Sky and Eric Young as they answer fan questions online. That's it. So then we see Sam Shaw versus Mr. Anderson. Before the match, Shaw grabs the mic, climbs to the top of the cage, and sits. He says that he is going to kill himself if Christy Hemme doesn't come out. As he attempts to stand and supposedly end his life, Mr. Anderson comes out and does his lame microphone gimmick. He tells Shaw that he won't succeed at killing himself by jumping off the cage, so he should find a higher platform. Anderson says he would like to whip Shaw's ass before he takes his suicide trip. He drops the CB moniker on Shaw and comes down to the ring and the match begins. Okay match, I guess. This cage match has the pussy stipulation that the wrestler that has to climb over the top of the cage and descend to the floor or walk out of the open cage door wins. During the match, for some reason, Christy Hemme comes to the ring. Also, Earl Hebner gets knocked down outside the ring after Anderson starts a chain reaction. He hits Shaw. Shaw hits cage door. Cage door hits Senior. The match ends with Christy cheering on Anderson as he climbs down the outside of the cage, with Shaw lying in the corner. Anderson's feet hit the floor, so he quote-unquote wins the match. But Senior is still down. By then, Shaw has grabbed Christy and has dragged her into the ring through one of those ridiculous holes in the corner of the cage. Shaw crawls after Christy and corners her, and she slaps him. Anderson grabs the key to the cage door and enters through there. He pulls Shaw back and knocks him down with a series of punches. Anderson helps Christy out of the cage door, but Shaw hits him low from behind. Anderson throws blows, but Shaw ducks each one and locks in the standing arm triangle choke. Anderson succumbs to the hold and Shaw puts him down on the mat. As Christy runs to the back, Shaw walks out the open cage door. The winner of the match, Sam Shaw. The suicide segment was all wrong because the thinking that Shaw would expect Christy to come out because she cares about whether he lives or dies was totally off. Christy coming out really doesn't make sense. She should make Shaw's job to capture her harder, not easier. Nevertheless, the cat continues his pursuit, but the chase must end soon. So then we see Robert Roode and the glorified jobbers backstage. Roode acknowledges they're regaining the World Tag Team Championship, which defies any logical explanation. Roode wants to know where Aries is, and he comes into the shot. Aries says that with him on the team, Dixie has no need for her so-called insurance policy. Roode says that the team that he's leading will be good enough to get the job in the bag. Aries says that he still wants half of Roode's potential ownership. And then Robbie E. and Mr. Duh start barking about getting some scraps. Roode makes a new offer. He'll take 6%, Aries will settle for 2%, and the jobbers can split the remaining 2%. Yes, this arguing and negotiating over a percentage that doesn't hold much power anyway is silly. But the booking of this match still jumps beyond the boundaries of clear sense. Instead of having bad influence in this match, TNA goes with the glorified jobbers. The internal joke continues. So then we see Ethan Carter III come to the ring. Ethan says that while he envisioned being the best wrestler as a youngster, Kurt Angle became the top wrestler at the Olympics and made a successful shift through the pros. He says that Angle is one of the top dogs, but he is too. Ethan says that he injured Angle's knee 2 times and accuses Angle of getting cut on in order to avoid wrestling him. He says that action has kept him from getting his defining win. Ethan decides to issue an open challenge to a roster member. And Robert Lashley comes to the ring. Ethan tells Lashley that he's not a roster member and can't wrestle him. He repeatedly tells Lashley to get out of the ring, then takes a swing at him. Lashley ducks, picks him up, and delivers a running power slam. He waits for Ethan to get up and spears him. Ethan retreats. Ethan came off solid, and his engagement with the crowd was the best part. The crowd tells Ethan that he can't wrestle, and he gives them alternate responses between saying that he disagrees and saying that he's very good, accompanied by the facial expressions. It was funny. I see this potential deal with Robert Lashley as being a stall program. In other words, it's something for Ethan to do until Kurt Angle is well enough to wrestle. As far as Lashley goes, his return wasn't moving, but we'll see what he does and how he does it. So then we see a repeat of the Kenny King, King of the Night video. King should have been here. Lockdown would have been the perfect setting for the launch of his revamped character. He didn't need to wrestle, but if he showed up in a limo with some chicks, dropped a promo outside the arena, and then left in the limo, that would have been cool. So then we see Velvet Sky again backstage, responding to fan questions online. And she's probably answering the same 3 questions for the 787th time. Will you marry me? How big are your tits? When are you going to do porn? So then we see Magnus backstage. Magnus says that he's had to do things on his own during his tenure as a professional wrestler. And now it's even more evident of that because he'll be locked in a steel cage with Samoa Joe for the title, with the stipulation advantage going to Joe. He says that the focus of everyone is on how Joe's going to handle him instead of the opposite. Magnus says that Joe may have the physicality to win the title, but he doesn't have the cerebral juice. He says that he has the complete presentation and that even though he's not an animal like Joe, he can act like one if the situation calls for it. So then we had Tigre Uno versus Manic. Solid match. The match ends with Tigre going up to the top rope, but Manic follows him up. Tigre flips over Manic and tries to powerbomb him, but Manic kicks him away and hits him from behind with a missile dropkick. He follows that with a sit-out powerbomb, but Tigre kicks out. Manic lifts Tigre up in a double underhook, but Tigre does a roll-through. He turns Manic over and picks him up, but Manic goes behind Tigre and tries to double underhook again. Tigre escapes, elbows Manic in the head, and tries to whip him, but Manic stops his momentum with an arm twist and kicks Tigre in the midsection. Manic goes for a spin kick, but Tigre catches his leg and executes a high cradle suplex. Tigre goes to the top rope and executes the saber-tooth splash for the 3. The winner of the match, Tigre Uno. This was a solid debut for Tigre, and since TNA has been placing emphasis on him with his video promos, he will likely be the first challenger to Sonata for the X Division title. So then we had the last man standing match. James Storm versus Gunner. Good match. The match ends with Storm placing 2 open chairs opposite each other on the mat. He tries to lift Gunner, but Gunner resists. Storm hits him across the back and throws him into the corner. He charges, but Gunner hits him with an elbow to the face. Gunner jumps up to the middle rope, but Storm slugs him. Storm goes up, and both men are now standing on the top rope. They go through an exchange of head bashes into the cage, with Gunner taking a slight advantage. He headbutts Storm 3 times, looks back toward the chairs on the mat, and executes a superplex on the chairs. The referee delivers a double count, but Gunner makes it to his feet before the count of 10. The winner of the match, Gunner. The physical output in this match successfully equaled the hatred that both men have for each other, and that balance was reflected well. Storm's new look, along with his new music, made him come off like a true heel. Gunner still needs new music, but his psych-up of ramming his head into the turnbuckle fits him, and it comes off great when he does it. This program will continue, and the World Tag Team Title Shot briefcase will likely become the centerpiece for the next stage. So then we see the American Wolves backstage getting themselves amped up for the Lethal Lockdown match. Montel Porter comes into the shot and tells them to relax. He says that they need to have a calmer approach. But Richards brings up Aries injuring his shoulder, and Edwards mentions Dixie's head play as reasons why they can't be calm. Porter tells them that if they come off too pissed with their aggression, that will result in errors being made that could cost them the match. He says that when the time is right, that will be the moment for them to do what they do best. So then we had the Women's Championship match. Madison Rayne defending against Gail Kim, accompanied by Lady Tapa. Decent match, better than expected. The match ends with both women positioned on the top rope at the midpoint between the turnbuckles. Madison hits Gail in the back, but Gail responds by kicking her in the midsection and ramming her head into the cage. Then Gail turns her back to Madison, grabs her by the head, and executes a neck breaker from the top rope. She rolls over and goes for the pin, but Madison gets her shoulder up. Gail tries to exit the cage through the open door, but Madison pulls her back in by her leg. She takes hold of Gail around the waist from behind and runs her toward the ropes. Gail breaks away, causing Madison to go into the side of the cage. Gail drags her back by the leg and goes for a jackknife pin, but Madison kicks out. Gail goes to the opposite side of the cage and tries to climb up the cage, with Madison following her. Both women go at each other on the top rope before Madison knocks Gail off. Her face hits the top rope and she flops backwards to the mat. Tapa tries to climb the cage from the outside of the ring, but the force of Madison's kick knocks Tapa back to the floor. Madison walks along the top rope to the top turnbuckle and delivers a spear to Gail. She gets the 3. The winner of the match, Madison Rayne. If TNA is going to keep the belt on Madison, then they have to start making her the face of the division. She has to be the lead instead of playing second to Velvet Sky. Note to the members of the Madison Rayne flock that hate Gail Kim so much. The irony here is that you can hate her, but she was the one who made your girl look the best that she has looked since her return. If Madison drives the car, Gail is the engine that makes the car go. So then we see Samoa Joe backstage. Joe says that 90 days is the amount of time that he needed to place himself at the point that he is at now. He says that Magnus was someone that he could depend on, that he allowed Magnus to put himself in the position to be prominent by winning the tag team belts with him and by joining the Main Event Mafia. Joe says that Magnus chose to take the simple, selfish route to get over, and that he will deal with the brutality coming his way for doing so. He tells Magnus that he has waited 90 days to take the belt, and that's what he's going to do. So then we have the World Heavyweight Championship. Magnus defending against Samoa Joe. Decent match until that finish. The match ends with Joe locking in the rear naked choke on Magnus on the mat. Then a hand that becomes an arm appears through the mat. The arm takes hold of Joe and pulls him down through the torn hole in the mat. Then after about a minute, Joe comes back up through the mat and corners Magnus. He puts Magnus up on the top turnbuckle by the neck. Joe releases his grip and backs off, but then an unmasked Abyss appears. He turns Joe around and hits him in the midsection with his signature. Abyss throws the signature across the ring, picks Joe up, and delivers the Black Hole Slam. Magnus looks at Abyss and smiles. Then he puts Joe's own submission hold on him. The referee does the raise and drop and calls for the bell. The winner of the match, Magnus. TNA just couldn't resist, could they? The concept of just having Magnus and Samoa Joe go at each other without the outside crap just wasn't going to compute with the creative department. It was so important for Magnus to retain the title with a clean win. Until that happens, future title defenses for Magnus will be irrelevant. So then we see Eric Young backstage being held back by the dynamic duo of Al Snow and Simon Diamond, as he sees Magnus and Abyss together. Young yells something about Abyss needing someone to assist him in finding himself. Magnus says that Abyss did locate that person, that being him. So then we see Dixie Carter and Rockstar Dud backstage. Dixie is on the phone with her so-called insurance policy, and she tells him that Dud is going to bring him to the arena. As Dud leaves, Robert Roode enters. Roode wants to know who the insurance policy is, but Dixie refuses to tell him. She tells him that he needs to know that she won't do him wrong. Roode says that the word trust is not going to work here, but Dixie tells him that she's assured his team of gaining the one-man advantage in the match because Jeff Hardy will be prevented from entering. Roode reminds Dixie that if she does him over, she will regret doing so. So then we had the Lethal Lockdown match. Robert Roode, the Glorified Jobbers, and Austin Aries versus Montel Porter, the American Wolves, and Jeff Hardy. Good match. During the match, Jeff Hardy comes to the ring as Willow, and Bully Ray is revealed to be Dixie's insurance policy, the special referee. The match ends with Willow draped over a garbage can as Aries prepares to come off the top rope. Aries executes a 450, but Willow moves out of the way, causing Aries to land on the can. Willow delivers the twist of fate on Aries. Then he goes to the top rope and comes off with the Swanton Bomb, with the garbage can lid in between them. I have no explanation as to why Aries purposely placed the lid on his body. Willow goes for the pin, but Roode makes the save. Roode throws Willow into the side of the cage, and then he opens the legs of the table and places it upright. Roode picks up Porter and prepares to deliver the fireman's carry cutter through the table, but Bully Ray stands in his way. Roode yells at him, telling him to move. He dumps Porter on the mat and continues his verbal attack on Bully Ray. Roode shoves Bully Ray and throws a punch, but Bully Ray ducks and gives Roode a Uranagi. Bully Ray stands back and Porter gives him a confused look before hitting Roode with his drive-by kick. Porter pins him for the 3. The winners of the match, Montel Porter, the American Wolves, and Willow. Porter controls the company. Dixie loses her brain. Bully Ray power bombs Roode through a table. Show ends. Think about the film cliche. A cop catches a criminal, and the criminal goes to prison. The criminal escapes from prison and wants to get revenge on the cop that put him there. Now here's the analogy. Montel Porter has assumed control of TNA and has sent Dixie away, supposedly. That was the first stage. Now it's more than likely that Dixie will find a way to quote-unquote escape her position of not being in control by finding a way to get back there and get back at Porter. Whether she gets help from an unknown source or not, she likely will be back. If not, then it could be someone else. Basically, it's the proverbial seesaw. At this time, Porter's ass is in the air, Dixie's ass is on the ground. We know the positioning will change. We may not know the what or whom behind that, but we know there will be a win. I'm Tazmart 2002, and that was my Tna Lockdown 2014 analysis for March 9th, 2014. If you're listening to me on YouTube, please leave your comments below, click the like or dislike button, and if you subscribe, I would really appreciate it. If you're listening to me on the Wrestling News Talk Facebook page, you can leave your comments below and click the like button if you like what I've been saying. If you have any questions or comments about TNA or wrestling in general, you can reach me on Twitter, Tazmart2002, that's TAZMARK2002. And if your comments exceed the 140, get at me with an email, Tazmart2002@gmail.com. And be sure to watch the TNA Impact review that I do with Chuck P, live every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern Time on Chuck P's YouTube channel. If you can't watch us live, you can always watch the archive. And be sure to check out Chuck P's channel as well. Solid show. The world title match finish took a lot away from this pay-per-view, but solid show. TNA fans had a natural high for the 6 weeks prior to lockdown as we enjoyed watching Impact before large, enthusiastic crowds in the UK. Now TNA returns to the Universal soundstage. The UK drug is gone, and for some, they will feel the withdrawal as the theme park visitor crowd may not give them any reason to feel good about the perception of what they see. For others, they will allow the creative direction to focus on new talent and the diverse storylines to determine their faith in the company's future, not the crowds. We need both. TNA has been poor at marketing and promoting, and this has to change, now more so than at any other time. The approach has to be different, and they have to be patient with it. But the approach won't work if the mentality doesn't match it. Will the mentality change? I'm Tazmart 2002. Gone.